That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I know something looks wrong with my skin. Let me address it. Popped a bunch of blood vessels at the gym. Hopefully, this is gone tomorrow. But nonetheless, I don't want to say an exciting video to make, but I have some clarifications we have to get out there because there are a few players that I thought were completely either overvalued or undervalued at the beginning of the offseason. And I've gone out there and I've been on record saying Leonard Fournette is overvalued. Player X is undervalued. Yada, yada, yada. I've been on record saying that. And some of these guys have seen their ADP just fall through the floor. I mean, Leonard Fournette's going to be the perfect example of this player that his price is literally half of what it once was. And literally nothing has changed outside of the majority of the Dynasty community finally understanding the situation that he is in. And yeah, I'm going to be happy to reevaluate our stance on these players because if there's a massive price difference, we should be able to reevaluate it. I mean, if you thought Facebook was overvalued at $350 a share when it goes down to $180, maybe there's a little bit of a buying opportunity. But before we get into anything, you know what I'm going to say. Go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy Dynasty Fantasy Football and you want probably the best quality content you can find on Dynasty Fantasy Football, and leave a comment. Let me know why I am so stupid because I know that's everyone's favorite thing to say, including my own. But I think that should be it. Let's go through and let's dive into the player that we first started off talking about, Leonard Fournette. Now, it doesn't matter if we are looking at best ball drafts where he used to be going in the 3rd round at the very beginning of this offseason and now he's going in the 7th, or if we're looking at dynasty startups. I mean, let me pull up the first dynasty startup we did. I mean, this was a mock draft on this channel right after the season ended, and Leonard Fournette ended up going at the 612. And that's not too bad of a selection, but when we see Leonard Fournette go directly ahead of Elijah Mitchell, when I see him go ahead of David Montgomery, Michael Carter, I'm going to have to speak up. I'm going to have to make videos saying, hey, don't y'all know Leonard Fournette is going to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason? We don't exactly know what the situation's going to be. We don't know if Tampa's going to bring him back. We don't know if Tom Brady's going to be in Tampa. There is a lot of uncertainty to be drafting someone like Leonard Fournette over David Montgomery, a significantly younger running back on his rookie deal in Chicago. That's probably a pretty bad selection. Whereas we have now seen Leonard Fournette in our last startup mock draft. And trust me, if this was a one-time scenario, if this was the only time I've seen Leonard Fournette fall this much with his dynasty value, I wouldn't have acted on anything because any one mock draft isn't really that indicative of the entire dynasty landscape. But when I see him falling so much in best ball drafts, when I see him falling so much in perceived trade value based on all the DMs I get every single day on Patreon, yeah, I mean, this is, I don't want to say exactly where his value is, but in the ballpark. In our last mock draft, he goes at the 9-10. Running backs that Leonard Fournette was drafted behind: Damian Harris, Rashad Penny. JN here takes Rashad Penny over him. Terrifying me because JN is now the co-owner of pretty much every dynasty league that I have. So that was a little alarming. We see Kyron Williams go over him. Miles Sanders over him. We see, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire not only go before Leonard Fournette, but by about 30 picks. See Michael Carter go 31 picks ahead of him. Ezekiel Elliott, like 32 picks ahead of him. So the price point on Leonard Fournette, completely different than what it once was. I mean, going behind Kadarius Toney, in between David Bell, and like I said, this one mock draft isn't going to be an exact source, but pull up his underdog best ball ADP, and you are going to see how far Leonard Fournette has fallen over the past 3 months. And yes, Tom Brady retired, but he's a free agent. I mean, at this point, I think it's almost safe to say that Leonard Fournette's not going back to Tampa. So the first thing I need to address is with Leonard Fournette's value, one reason why it's going to be pretty damn low this offseason is really there's only one type of team that's going to be trading for Leonard Fournette, and that is a contending roster that is looking to put points up this upcoming season. Now, one thing I want to talk about here is Leonard Fournette's age and what we should be expecting going forward, because of course, that's a major red flag with Leonard Fournette, as it is with so many of these other running backs. I mean, let's just take a step back and realize we are at probably the inflection point of the entire running back landscape, not only in Dynasty, but in all of fantasy football, where we had the historic 2017 draft class. I mean, that 2017 running back draft class with Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, probably a couple other guys I'm forgetting about. Absurd. And a lot of those other players have seen their value remain relatively high, while Leonard Fournette has fallen off a cliff. Leonard Fournette just turned 27. Alvin Kamara turning 27 this offseason. Dalvin Cook turning 27 this offseason. Ezekiel Elliott, the draft class before, drafted at an incredibly young age out of Ohio State, 27 this offseason. Aaron Jones, already 27. Derrick Henry, 28. And Austin Eckler turning 27 this offseason. So all of these guys are in that same exact boat in terms of where they're at with their respective career arcs. Now, if we are looking at this past season, because that's going to be the most important thing to project Leonard Fournette going forward, is the usage that he had in that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And of course, a lot of this is going to change, because if we knew Leonard Fournette was in that same exact offense, Fournette would be a 4th round starter pick. He would be going about 60 picks higher than he currently is at the minimum. So I understand things are going to change, but we need to be asking ourselves, should they be changing this much to warrant the fact that he's now a 9th, 10th round starter pick and going in the 7th round of best ball drafts? Like with Leonard Fournette here, he was the running back 5 on a points per game basis this past season. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason, he played on the Bucs. Come on, the Bucs, one of the best offenses in the NFL. I'll agree with you on that one. Yes, he was very fortunate for the offense that he played in. Very fortunate to be playing alongside Tom Brady. Nobody is going to be lying about that. Now, what we have to try to accomplish is figuring out exactly how much of this was based on the offense and how much of this was based on Leonard Fournette himself. And of course, the running back position in particular is going to be the hardest position to try to take out of the situation and to evaluate them in the vacuum. Now, that's why, a lot of rookie running back prospects coming in, production's like one of the last things I look at, because wide receiver production, very independent of talent. We can definitely look at just wide receiver production, talent, they go hand in hand. Whereas running back production, it's usually separated. You get a lot of college running backs that are going out there and totaling 1,500 total yards like it's absolutely nothing. And then they go in the 6th round of the NFL draft because NFL teams know it was just the college system. And same thing with NFL offenses with these free agents changing teams. Now, with Fournette himself, what I like to see is the efficiency on a per touch basis, as well as the fact that his running back 5 finish on a per game basis was not based off of touchdown efficiency. Rather, it was based off of how he was deployed in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense and how that should be predictive of his deployment in other offenses going forward. Now, Leonard Fournette averaged about 13 carries a game, but more importantly, he averaged about 6 targets a game, 90 total yards a game, and only 0.7 touchdowns. That 0.7 touchdowns is not unsustainable in the slightest, even if he goes to a worse offense. Because remember, while yes, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had, a ridiculous amount of red zone attempts, I'm assuming because Brady knew it was near the end. Bruce Arians and Brady, they were just stat padding. They were out there 1st and 1. 1st and goal on the 1 yard line, pass. 2nd and goal on the 1 yard line, pass. 3rd and goal on the 1 yard line, pass. And then literally, I, for whatever reason, remember watching this game, beating the Chicago Bears by like 35 points. It's 4th and goal. They're going for it. They're letting Tom Brady throw it, trying to rack up as many of those passing touchdowns as he possibly can. So with Leonard Fournette, while he did benefit from being in a better offense and being able to just have more space and go up against less stacked boxes. It's not like this was a situation where the majority of his fantasy production was just fueled off of the total touchdowns in the offense. No, that's something that we shouldn't have to worry about. And I think the usage in the receiving game is going to be very predictive going forward. Now we have to ask ourselves, okay, so what situation is Leonard Fournette going to possibly fall in? I think if you were a betting man, if you had to look across the entire landscape of the NFL, of course, the most likely scenario right now is Leonard Fournette decides to go back to Tampa. But based on all reports, Leonard Fournette, the second that Tom Brady announced that he was retiring, is like, you know what? I'm going to test the waters of free agency. I don't know if I'm going to be back here. And I mean, I think it almost makes sense. Because think about the playoff run that Leonard Fournette had in 2020 and think about the contract that he signed this past offseason. This past offseason, I hate to always pull this up, but it's one of the most telling contracts that we are going to see. Kenyon Drake signed an $11 million guarantee to go over to the Las Vegas Raiders. And at the time, they were maybe viewed a little bit closer than they are now. But I would imagine if Leonard Fournette wanted to go sign that contract somewhere, he probably could have. But we have reports saying, you know what? Leonard Fournette wanted to play on a winning team. Leonard Fournette played pretty much his entire career in Jacksonville, and he wanted to do the exact opposite of that. That's why once he was cut from Jacksonville, he signed essentially a team minimum deal to go over and try to win a ring with Tom Brady. And then even after the dominant stretch, he signed a very team-friendly contract for only one season to see if they could repeat. I think at this point of his career, because remember, this isn't an Aaron Jones type situation where Aaron Jones made nothing on his rookie deal being drafted on day 3. Leonard Fournette had a pretty big payday the second that he was drafted to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the top 5 on that rookie contract. I think we can maybe say that Leonard Fournette cares a little bit more about winning rather than just the role in his own offense, because he could have signed elsewhere to just have that dominant 3-down role. He had multiple opportunities to. And also, I mean, Leonard Fournette probably cares a little bit more about winning than the actual raw amount of dollars he is getting on the deal, because we've seen him probably pass up more money elsewhere to go and play with Brady in Tampa. And of course, all speculation right here. I am talking out of my ass based on the small glimpses that we have been able to have into Leonard Fournette's decision-making. Of course, I could be completely wrong with all of this, and I'm fine admitting that that's a possibility. But let's go through and let's look at the potential landing spots for Leonard Fournette. I'm going to throw in the bad teams here as well. And I wrote down all the landing spots that I perceive to be possible. But you know what? There are so many teams. Might as well go through every team in the NFL as quickly as possible. Green Bay Packers can't go there, giving too much money to Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, second-round pick. They have that team investment. 49ers, a very real possibility. Hate to say it for every Elijah Mitchell owner. We saw, Jacksonville the year prior find great success with the running back they invested nothing into, still spent a first-round pick on a running back in Travis Etienne. We see that with these players all the time. Elijah Mitchell could get replaced with Leonard Fournette in San Francisco. Cincinnati, nope, paying too much money to Joe Mixon. The New England Patriots, a very real possibility. Elite offensive line, that team should be competitive, and they need a running back. I think you could easily see Leonard Fournette go over to New England, despite, I understand, Damian Harris being there. Keep in mind, team investment. He was drafted in 2019 last year on his deal. I think we could see Fournette there. Kansas City Chiefs, a little bit of a different story. He would definitely, I think, have to take a pay cut. They do have the first-round pick in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clearly, that hasn't panned out. They don't have any other running backs on the books, I believe, this upcoming season. I know McKinnon only had a one-year deal. Going over to Las Vegas, first-round pick to Jacobs in 2019, $11 million. Kenny Drake can't go to Las Vegas. Philadelphia, they can go to Philadelphia. Miles Sanders drafted second round 2019. Kenneth Gainwell, day 3 pick this past season, only running backs on the contract in that offense. And to go along with this, I believe this Miles Sanders third coaching staff. I could easily, second coaching staff, I apologize. I could see him going to Philadelphia. Minnesota, not possible. Tampa, probably the most likely outcome, but not likely in the first place. Los Angeles, not likely. Buffalo, that's a real possibility. I think you could see him go over to the Buffalo Bills. That would check pretty much every single box here. Washington, trust me, I love Antonio Gibson, but that is a possibility. New York Giants, not going to be a possibility. Denver Broncos, not going to be a possibility. Miami Dolphins, a very real possibility. Same thing with the Seattle Seahawks. He could go there. Chicago, borderline, most likely not. New Orleans, definitely not. Colts, definitely not. Lions, definitely not. Browns, definitely not. Ravens, definitely not. Cardinals, possibility, another great offense. I mean, Chargers, no. Titans, no. Carolina, no. New York Jets, definitely a possibility. Houston Texans, yes, those are going to be the teams. If he wants to get paid, if he wants to go, just make sure that he is set for life. He can go over to New York. He could go over to Houston. Jacksonville, those bridges are burned. Atlanta, maybe. That's a possibility. Dallas, no. Pittsburgh, no. But if you go through, hopefully, Thomas, can you throw up all those teams here? And let's just highlight the good landing spots that we had on that list. 49ers, good landing spot. Patriots, great landing spot. Chiefs, great landing spot. I mean, Bills, fantastic landing spot. I think you could make the argument Miami's going to be a great one based on the volume that he could have there. And then we could also throw the Cardinals onto that list. I mean, he has possibilities to go to teams with Super Bowl aspirations that don't really have running backs right now. Maybe he goes, signs a 2-year deal with guaranteed money. That would be my assumption. He could also sign a 3-year contract that's really a 2-year deal underneath if you look at the guaranteed money. But I'm looking at Fournette, a running back coming off of a top 5 season that's hitting free agency now, unlikely to go back to Tampa, saying we've seen him before want to play on Super Bowl contenders. There are a lot of Super Bowl contenders with no running back. We've seen him be willing to take a pay discount as well. Like, I know we're making a bullish case for Leonard Fournette here right after I was telling people that they were stupid to draft him over guys like David Montgomery, where we had the certainty, previously, but the price has been cut in half. Your investment now into Leonard Fournette is essentially nothing. Now, I do want to discuss what teams we could be trading for Leonard Fournette on, because of course, if right now on paper, you have a rebuilding roster, you were stocked up with picks, you were stocked up with guys, that project for the long term. Whether that's you having Jamar Chase and then 6 2023 first round picks, I don't know. If you're a clear rebuilding roster, of course, your number one priority is not going to be trading for Leonard Fournette, and that's a given. But we do need to take an assessment. And if your Dynasty League is active enough, and if you believe you would be able to flip him by the time we get to the start of the season, I think that it could be warranted to at least float an offer out there of a future second and a third round pick to get Leonard Fournette right now. Because the second that Fournette were to sign with one of those Super Bowl contenders, now, of course, I'm not saying that's guaranteed. I'm not even saying it's likely. I'm saying it's in the range of outcomes, and we needed to consider the probability of him doing so and how that should impact his dynasty value. If he were to sign to Arizona, to Buffalo, yada, 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 you could immediately, that day, flip him for a first round pick. And even if you couldn't, let's say he goes to Miami, then all of a sudden we get to August and people are drafting him in the 4th round of redraft leagues based on the fact that he's probably going to get over 5 targets a game. He's probably going to get over 15 carries a game, and he has a floor of a running back too. Well, at the minimum, and I repeat, the minimum, you can get your 2nd and 3rd round rookie pick back. So 9 times out of 10, I think it is a bad idea to be trading for a veteran running back in February and in March. Those are the players that we should be looking to avoid because their situations can really only change. A lot of guys that people perceive to be very safe assets. I love me some Antonio Gibson, but I'm not going to be that surprised if this team goes and drafts a running back in round 3, if they go sign someone in free agency like James Scott. I'm not going to be, blown away if that does happen. Really, a lot of those situations could only get worse. But with Leonard Fournette right now, it seems like people really weren't thinking about the possibility of his situation getting worse. And then all of a sudden, people realize that there will be changes, and their minds went to worst case scenario. Their minds went to the worst place they could possibly be in. Now, if I'm pulling up where I have Leonard Fournette in my rankings, I don't know if we have moved Leonard Fournette in these rankings for months. I still have him behind guys like David Montgomery. But if you're looking at the tier that I have with Leonard Fournette, I have him in the same tier as Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, and Leonard Fournette. That's our tier 9 in our Patreon rankings. Now, if we go over and check out where he's currently going compared to those running backs, it's say in this last startup draft, he goes 35 picks behind Aaron Jones and Ezekiel Elliott. When, in my opinion, what's the difference between these options? They're all win now running backs that have, pros and cons to their profiles. So let me know what I'm missing here, because I went from being lower on Leonard Fournette than most people to now all of a sudden being higher when people have just plummeted him down their rankings. But I had a couple other guys we can talk on this list. This video is already over 20 minutes, so I'm going to end it here. We'll get some other players going in tomorrow's video. I've been really liking just talking through these players, going a little bit deeper than most people want to, and trying to paint the entire picture. But of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock, supporting the channel, dropping a like on a video, leaving a comment, letting me know your thoughts. And yeah, that's it. Hope you have a great day. Hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow.